Welcome in to the Rockies Insider. I'm your insider, Patrick Lyons, celebrating New Year's Eve with you, or maybe New Year's Day, depending on when you might listen to this, but recapping a interesting 2024, to say the least. There were bright spots. Yes. A lot of people seeing the headline right off the bat going, what is there to celebrate when you lose 100 games? Well, what is there to celebrate when you lose 90? What is there to celebrate when you don't come away with a championship? Sure, maybe I'm turning it into something I shouldn't, but there was a lot of highlights. There were a lot of really positive things that I know a lot of Rockies fans out there are happy about. And a lot of Rockies fans do want to focus on maybe the more positive things that happened in 2024, because there were positives. And when you go back and look at 2024, in 5 years from now, there's going to be a couple things that stand out. And depending on the success of this club in the next couple of years, you very much could look back at 2024 and possibly say, hey, this was when the turnaround began. Turnover to the younger players on the roster, and then good things started to happen in 2025 and then 2026, the playoffs. Again, we'll wait and see what happens. But nevertheless, there were a lot of highlights, and the year really started off on the right foot for this franchise, because on January 23rd, the announcement was made that the Todd father, Todd Helton, was going to be part of the class of 2024 and get inducted into the Hall of Fame as the second Rockies player, third overall Rocky to ever be inducted into the Cooperstown National Baseball Hall of Fame. I was down there at the Cherry Cricket, a wonderful event that I was a part of organizing for our wonderful Sabre chapter in Denver. And in fact, it's the Rocky Mountain chapter. So it's Wyoming, Montana. It stretches a long ways. And we had a really great outing. And there were so many Rockies fans that were pumped and excited, and a couple that weren't able to make it for Larry Walker's announcement back in January of 2020, just before the pandemic, just before the world got wild. So that was just such a huge moment to do that. And then immediately to go out on the street on Blake Street, staring at Coors Field on the conference call with Todd in the Baseball Hall of Fame. That was very much a surreal moment. And I felt very lucky and blessed to have shared that with so many wonderful Rockies fans and people that have been a part of the Rockies organization in the past. And I know the Rockies were there recording it, and you probably saw on a lot of the clip shows or a lot of the highlights about Rockies fans celebrating all across the country. We were there as part of that, our Rocky Mountain chapter of Sabre. So that was a wonderful start to the year. And then only a couple days later was Rockies Fest, returning for the first time in what felt like forever. You know, players being at the ballpark, fans mingling with players, playing games, getting autographs, that amazing garage sale that they have. Every year they have it. And when they do the Rockies Fest, I should say. And this time, what was so interesting was they had all the stuff from the All-Star game for the first time. And so there was a lot of good deals to be had, a lot of good memorabilia and merchandise. They're running it back this year, Saturday, January 25th, coming up on January 7th. Not sure what day of the week that is. Is that next Tuesday? So a week from today. $15, you can get your ticket. You do get one autographed item per ticket, limit 8 tickets. So if you're looking for something, and especially when it starts to get a little bit colder out, I think we're going to have winter at some point this winter. It's been relatively nice out, but if it does get cold, you can go indoors at Coors Field, enjoy Rockies Fest. It is a pretty fun event, and it's a nice little opportunity to hang out with some other Rockies fans. That's how the year started. And then the season began. Spring training, to my knowledge, there's nothing that jumps off the page that we had to really talk about. But as soon as the season began on opening day, not going to necessarily talk about the drubbing at the hands of the D-backs that the Rockies suffered and really spiraled them out of control to start their season. It's amazing to think that there was a point late in the year where they were on pace for 99 losses and not 100. They did finish with 101. But even after that crazy start, they did correct the course just a little bit, at least to avoid 100 losses. They were on about 122 loss pace at one point. And again, that opening day loss in Arizona was really bad. But also on opening day, technically you can say our very own, Colorado's own, Jenny Cavnar actually beat Todd Helton to the Hall of Fame as she became the first primary play-by-play female in baseball history. Her headset, some other items, the talk box or credential from the A's opening day went to Cooperstown. And, you know, a lot of Rockies fans remember her from AT&T Sportsnet, those days, those good old days. And especially even in April of 2018, when Cavnar became the first woman in 25 years to call a play-by-play game for an MLB contest, where she was on the mic for that Rockies-Padres game. So a lot of really great history being made. And then once the Rockies did get home, April 5th, because the Rockies, look, this is what they do. I think this is part of the secret sauce of why attendance is so good at Coors Field, because they win about half the time at home. If you're going to a game, there's a good chance you're going to end up leaving pretty darn happy, especially when you look at some of the prices for beer and for food. It's relatively affordable compared to a lot of other cities around the nation. So it is a good time, especially if it's a sunny day. And they got a chance to have a walk-off win, and they did absolutely that on the home opener. Ryan McMahon becomes only the third player in Rockies history with a walk-off grand slam. Does it against the Tampa Bay Rays. And first walk-off grand slam, of course, in home opener history. He joins Charlie Blackmon, who did it back in 2020 with no fans in the building. That was a wild one. And then, of course, this famous Spilly Slam, sprinting around the bases, jumping in the arms of his teammates. Emotional moment. So this one was a really good one to get the season started and give a little bit of positivity to the Rockies. They almost had it again later on in the month, April 21st. Do you remember Jacob Stallings' walk-off home run that wasn't actually a walk-off home run? I believe the score was 0-0 going into the 10th inning against Seattle. I don't think that had ever happened in Coors Field history. Mariner scored in the top of the 10th, and then what should have been a walk-off home run ended up getting overturned. But then Ryan McMahon finishes it with a walk-off to snap what ended up being a 6-game losing streak at that point. So 2 walk-offs early in the season at home at Coors Field. Rockies had 9 walk-offs in total. A lot of their wins this season and a lot of their wins at home came in the final at bat. A lot more memorable ones coming up. April 27th and 28th, they played a pair of home games in Mexico City. Yeah, they were considered home games. So the Rockies this year only played 79 contests at Coors Field. They didn't look great against Houston, lost both of those games. You could argue that that was a somewhat of a turning point for the Astros to really help get them out of the muck and mire that they were in. They were awful the whole first month of the season. And a lot of people counted them out. I, for one, did not. You can go ahead and check the records over at Who's Better Baseball over on the Just Baseball podcast and Just Baseball Network. Me and Ryan Finkelstein talked about it, and the Astros just had such a veteran core that you couldn't count out a team quite like that. And really, they got their engines revved up in that series down in Mexico City. So not so good for the Rockies for that. May 10th, it was great to see John Gray back at Coors Field. Now, it was Gray's second time coming back to Coors Field after leaving the organization following the 2021 season. We had signed a 4-year deal with the Texas Rangers. Came back pretty quickly in 2022. He was on the IL, didn't pitch, but this was his first time back at Coors Field pitching for the first time since September 25th, 2021. Nearly 1,000 days between starts at Coors Field in Denver for John Gray. The final batter he had faced back in 2021 was Buster Posey. Who's the first batter he faces in 2024? Back at Coors Field as a member of the Rangers with that fresh World Series ring on his finger? None other than his good friend and teammate, Charlie Blackmon. Again, you can't make those things up. John Gray just speaking very well of the Rockies fans, just greeting him with a lot of warmth. And so that was a very positive experience for the Gray Wolf himself. 2 days later, Brendan Rodgers finally gets himself a stolen base. Yes, up to that point, Brendan Rodgers had never stolen a base, starting with his debut in Philadelphia in May of 2019. He had never stolen a base. His 352 games before his first stolen base or stolen base attempt were the most by any middle infielder, with at least 75% of their games in the middle infield in the expansion era. So since 1961. So he hadn't even attempted a stolen base. And then May 12th, against the Rangers, he finally got the job done. It was the longest drought for any non-pitcher in franchise history. So that was certainly an interesting one that I think when you look at a player's baseball reference page and you're looking at numbers, you stumble across certain things and go, wait a minute, Brendan Rodgers has never had a stolen base before? I got to file that one away. And sure enough, he got the job done in May. So he now has one. He has all of one right now, currently a free agent. May 15th, the Jordan Beck game, debuting early on. Got the opportunity, played great in spring training, got the opportunity to start his year in AAA in 2024. Debuted soon after that, after about a month, with the Albuquerque Isotopes, and had his first career home run on May 15th and recorded 5 RBI in the 9th spot in the order. First player in Rockies history to start a game as the number 9 hitter and record 5 RBI. Later in the month on May 24th, Ezequiel Tovar had himself a walk-off winner against the Phillies in Los Angeles, May 31st. You remember this one? Dakota Hudson looked really solid against the Dodgers. He was much better on the road than he was at home. What was it? Wasn't his ERA around 7 at Coors Field? And then on the road, it was in like the mid-3s. Overall, not a great campaign for Dakota Hudson, but he looked great against the Dodgers on May 31st. He actually became the first player in baseball history. I actually made this stat up. It's true. It's real. But I made it up. I had to look and say, well, wait a minute. The Dodgers have 3 MVPs, and that, of course, was a big part of the Dodgers storyline early in the season, at least until Mookie Betts got hit. You had Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman, 1, 2, 3 in the Dodgers order, and those guys were dominating early on in the game. And Hudson right away starts the game and does not allow a base hit or a walk to either of those guys. No one had done that. Every game up to that point in the season, either Ohtani, Betts, or Freeman reached base on a walk or a base hit, retired them in order. First player to ever do that, to 3 MVPs to start a game. So a nice little memory, I imagine, for him. June 15th. Do you remember when Ryan McMahon stole home? Yes, that was a thing. He stole home, becoming the first Rockies player to do that since, I know you're thinking about it, because it was a long time ago. It was over a decade ago. 2011, the last time a Rocky stole home. It was Dexter Fowler. McMahon, I believe, was only the second third baseman. The first one to ever do it was Charlie Hayes, a third baseman for the Rockies, back in, I think it was their first season in 93. I know he was the first player to do it for the Rockies. June 15th, McMahon steals home. And then June 18th, boy, oh boy, we could talk about this game a lot. And in a different season where the Rockies end up salvaging a season and going to the postseason, going to the playoffs, you could look at June 18th as a major turning point. And I imagine it was a turning point a little bit in the clubhouse, because it was a moment in time where the Rockies just felt like they were down and they were getting kicked while they were down. Because June 18th was indeed the check swing heard around the world. 2 outs, 2 strikes, bases loaded. Teoscar Hernandez at the plate. Seemed to everybody in the ballpark, including myself, including Jay Cave, who had a pretty good view out in right field. If you're in left field, you can't tell quite as much. Think about it. Check swing for a right-handed hitter. Where do you go? First base ump. That's right field. And that check swing, apparently he checked it. First base umpire said, no swing. Well, the next time, Hernandez lifted the bat off of his shoulder. He goes right center, oppo for a grand slam and completely nullifies the Rockies' lead. And Jake Cave absolutely livid that this win was stolen from the Rockies. And even when the inning was over, which wasn't much long after that, but the inning was over, and he, again, talk about having a good view. Cave in right field, looking directly into the third base dugout, and right behind him, all those Dodgers fans. Where if you know what the video can look like at Coors Field when the Dodgers come to Denver. If you're just looking behind home plate, you might think it is Dodger Stadium with the amount of Dodgers fans and the passion that they have during these games. And so for those Dodgers fans to be going ballistic for stealing a win out of the back pocket of the Rockies, not great. Cave coming off the field, chirping at the first base umpire. Alan Trejo doing a great job, being a great teammate, getting in between Cave and the first base umpire. Cave eventually left on deck when the final out is made. Still had some more words for the first base umpire as he comes off the field. And at that moment, fan sentiment starts to change a little bit about Jake Cave. He becomes a man of the people. Sure, fans still saying this guy shouldn't be playing as much as he is. There's a lot of younger players that could benefit from this playing time. That's still true. But I think a lot of those fans that may have pointed a finger at Cave as if it was his fault, as if he makes up the lineup card, he does not. No player does. Now all of a sudden, those fans say, well, all right, I can't fault Jake Cave for doing the best he can and being in the starting lineup. That's not his fault. I can be upset at management. I can be upset at the front office. You know what? Jake Cave as a person, as a player, as a teammate, as a Rocky, he's a guy I want to get behind. And from there, Jake Cave becomes a man of the people and starts to have his big moments. And here on the Rockies Insider, anytime I talked with someone, whether it was a Cubs beat reporter, Orioles, Ryan Herrera, Daniel Allentuck from Baltimore Banner, Jesse Friedman formerly of PHNX D-backs. I haven't addressed that. Not a pleasant thing to discuss. But at that point, anytime I talked with someone, I always had to ask, who's your Jake Cave? Who is your team's Jake Cave? Because if you didn't know, Jake Cave starts a rally and he ends a rally. He gets it going. And he absolutely did that numerous times after that check swing heard round the world July 1st. He would absolutely do that with a walk-off winner. But June 22nd, do you remember this? The first ever clock-off win in baseball history. Rockies win with the bases loaded, 3 balls on Ryan McMahon and Kyle Finnegan, who's had a lot of pitch clock violations. Whether he's the closer or setup man, he takes his time on the mound. And with 3 balls in the count on Ryan McMahon, the clock runs out. Clock off. Time elapsed. That's now a ball. That's ball 4. McMahon goes to first. Everybody moves up a base. Game over. On a walk-off. On a walk-off walk that's prompted by a pitch clock violation, a.k.a. a clock-off. The first one in Major League history. It did happen in a spring training game. It's actually one of the first spring training games when they unveiled the pitch clock. But this was the first in a regular season or postseason game. Pitch clock violation. Memorable. June 22nd against the Nationals. July 1st, Jake Cave, walk-off winner, goes ballistic, goes wild, and he deserved it. Pent up. A lot of pent-up energy, not just for Jake Cave, but I think for the entire team. And so Cave goes crazy, big walk-off. Aaron Shunk's debut, he scores the winning run. Talking with him after the game, he said, Jake Cave is a legend. I am forever indebted to him for giving me this first game in the majors memory. Scoring the run. It couldn't have happened without Jake Cave. Thank you for that gift. So keep that in mind when it comes to these players and their careers. I don't know what the future is going to hold for a guy like Aaron Schunk, but if he goes deep, he's still around with the Rockies going into the postseason, or if he's with another team and goes to the postseason and becomes one of those playoff heroes, and he gives one of those dissertations about his career and his life. Jay Cave is a part of that, giving him his first big league memory like that. Will, thanks for joining in the chat. Jay Cave getting big mad. Yeah, that was such a memorable moment. I think people will remember that more than his walk-off, more than that game-tying 2-run home run in Anaheim later on in the summer. Just him going crazy. And again, that frustration I think so many Rockies fans have that, hey, we're finally seeing it in a Rockies player. And I don't know that Rockies fans necessarily want to see that kind of frustration more in their team. We've seen it before, right? You remember Kyle Freeland busting that light in the dugout? The Band-Aids are still there, believe it or not. And I'm sorry, Kyle Freeland signed it. That's all still there in the dugout 2 years later. You do want to see a certain level of frustration. I think you do see it from time to time. But to that level where you're almost nose to nose with an umpire, Will, you make a great point. Like that's memorable. That is absolutely a major memorable moment. And it was also one of the first fun post-game scrums, because as Cave is talking and he does good. You give him a subject, you give him a question, he's going to take it and run with it. Sure enough, I ended up seeing over corner of my eye. I'll go ahead and post that on New Year's Day. Some of these best moments and clips from the 2024 season. But I saw it out of the corner of my eye. Ryan McMahon holding his phone out like he's recording. Cave gets done talking. McMahon says, "Hey, Jake, can you elaborate on what you said to the dugout after that walk-off win?" And of course, inside joke there between those two players. Great moment, funny moment. Those are some of the nice things that reduces some of the tension that can come about when you're struggling in a season and you're struggling overall as a franchise. So that was a really cool moment there in the first 3 months of the season. Like those were, I think, the biggest things through the first 3 months of 2024 when the Rockies were already going to be out of it. You knew they weren't going to the postseason. It was very much about will they or won't they lose 100 games. And I think once you get to the second half of the season and everything's pretty much written in stone, and it becomes about the individual players, there's even more to discuss. There's even more highlights. There's even more memorable moments, because then it becomes about the moments. It's no longer about the season. It's about individual players. It's about the narratives that come with turning things over to that youth movement. And you really began to see that starting in the second half, starting right around that All-Star break. And even a month later, in the middle of August, when you started to get all of those promotions from those young players, those relievers too, a lot of them making their major league debut. Rockies Insider with Patrick Lyons recapping the best of 2024, the highlights, not the lowlights. You can do that on Twitter, right? You can do that on X. You can do that on social media. A lot of people frustrated. Again, losing 100 games consecutively is going to create a ton of frustration and disappointment. A lot of fans right now a little disappointed looking at what the Rockies have done this offseason, thinking it really isn't much, especially when you look at what the other teams in the NL West have done. Padres haven't done anything. In fact, they might be looking to shed a little bit of payroll. I'll be talking plenty more about this later on in the week. I know the guys over at the Best of the West, new podcast launched by Blake Street Banner, did a really good job recapping the last week or two in the NL West. But besides the Padres somewhat standing pat, and they got a great roster of players. They are coming off a playoff season. The Diamondbacks got a lot better. Josh Naylor and Corbin Burns. The Giants getting better with Willie Adames and Buster Posey now running the show. And then the Dodgers being the Dodgers, Blake Snell, Michael Conforto, Teoscar Hernandez coming back. Roki Sasaki probably going to LA. We'll wait and see what happens. But even if that doesn't come to fruition, everybody in the West seemingly getting better. And despite the belief that, you know what, the Rockies are going to be better in 2025 because there's going to be younger players making an impact, and their growth is going to provide growth in the win column for the team as a whole. You have to look and say a lot of that could possibly get negated by the fact that the rest of the division is getting that much better. And it's hard to argue that point that's being made by a lot of folks out there. But we're going to talk about the second half of 2024 when the Rockies already out of the hunt, making a couple trades, shrewd deals that ended up really helping them out in the second half, bolstering their depth, finding some bright spots in these trades, and recognizing that, yeah, this is another lost season, 6th consecutive losing campaign, but there are plenty of memorable moments, memorable performances, and goodbye to one of the greatest to ever don the purple pinstripes. That's what the second half of the season was all about. July 14th, I think that was right before the All-Star break, in New York against the Mets, Citi Field. July 14th, couple memorable moments. One probably bigger than the other, but one still really huge. Michael Toglia, 3 home runs in Citi Field. First switch hitter in franchise history to ever have 3 in a single game. Toglia just emerging in the second half of the year, hitting 25 home runs, most in franchise history by a franchise switch hitter. Impressive. Tied for 6th most in the majors by a switch hitter, 3rd most in the NL. Also had himself a 6 home run in 6 game span from July 9th through 14th, 11th Rocky in history to accomplish that feat. Not even just a rookie or a young player, just 6 in 6 games, 11th Rocky to do that, first since Charlie Blackmon in 2016. Think of all those runs that Story and Arenado, even CJ Cron, didn't have 6 in 6 game span. Impressive. Really, really, really great performance. In fact, didn't have any singles or extra base hits in that span. So he became the first player in Rockies history with 6 consecutive base hits that were home runs. Big Mike, he can hit them. Big fly. Big flies for Big Mike. But also in that game, somewhat bittersweet, Germán Márquez made what would ultimately be his only start of the year, did return from Tommy John, which was, again, wonderful to see him get back on the mound and say, look, I did it. My rehab was successful. Unfortunately, he did get shut down. Don't know what's going to happen in 2025. What can you expect out of him? Honestly, you might have to set the over-under at 100 innings. If he's able to do that, that's probably about 20 starts, maybe 16 to 18. Again, is that only half a season? Yeah, probably. But that's still a success because guys, when they have Tommy John surgery, some of them just don't return at all. But in that July 14th contest against the Mets, Germán Márquez, strikeouts 3, needed 2 to tie Jorge De La Rosa's record for 985 career strikeouts with the Rockies. He ends up getting 3, punches out Pete Alonso to set an all-time Rockies franchise record, 986 career strikeouts for Marquis. That again, very bittersweet. He gets the record and then immediately has to shut it down. So it will be great if he can get back on the mound, be somewhat healthy in 2025. And what is his final year before free agency? Who knows? Maybe an extension could come at some point during the season if he can show that he is healthy and fully recovered and recuperated from Tommy John surgery, and then eventually can become the first Rocky to reach 1,000 strikeouts. July 22nd, Boston comes to town. It's memorable for a couple of reasons. First, of course, Trevor Story, first time back at Coors Field. Great to see him taking grounders. Didn't play in that series. He was still hurt, but returns for the first time. Now, the Red Sox did play at Coors Field in 2022, but he was hurt at that point, so he did not make the trip to Denver. Makes sense. But this time he did make the trip, got that out of the way, got the video package, reunited with a bunch of teammates, got to see Charlie, and it was great. He even took ground balls at Coors Field. So having Trevor Story back in Denver was really nice for the first time since 2021. 2 days later, during a day game, you might remember that bench clearing incident with the Bo Sox. Bench clearing with the Bo Sox. Cal Quantrill gets himself into a jam, and as we've seen a couple times with him, seen it with Jay Cave too in the past, they get pumped up. Sure, it's not Game 7 of the World Series, but for these guys, many times you have to pitch as if this could be your last pitch. This could be the last ball you throw because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't even know what's going to happen in 5 minutes. Adam Ottavino said that when the Mets came to town, that there was a point in the year where he was on the mound, he got himself into a jam, and he thought, if I don't get out of this, I could be done. Mets could get rid of me. I'm struggling quite a bit. I'm a little bit older. I don't know if anyone's going to want my services. I don't know if anyone's going to believe I can turn things around. He got out of that jam. He continued to play. He is now a free agent. And I think any number of teams would love to sign him on a 1-year deal. May have to settle for a minor league deal. I don't know that he wants to do that necessarily. But nevertheless, you don't know if one pitch to the next is going to be your last. Sounds dramatic, but it is true. That's how these guys play. That's how they play hard. So Bird, Quantrill, nevertheless, Quantrill gets a pop out for what's going to be the third out of the inning, gets out of a big jam right before the trade deadline. Keep in mind, his name's been dangled out there in some trade rumors. Might be helping his value a ton by getting out of this jam. Who knows? He might go into the dugout, and because he got out of that jam, certain dominoes fall, and a deal gets done. And he's traded to a contender. Or rather, if he doesn't get out of that jam, maybe a contender hangs up and says, you know what, on second thought, we don't want his services. And that trade is squandered. You don't know what's going through these guys' heads. You don't know how they look at every pitch being important. Nevertheless, Quantrill gets the pop out. He gets pumped, excited, and Reese McGuire takes offense to this and says, like, bro, chill out. Like, why are you yelling in my direction? Why are you yelling at me? Quantrill was not doing that, but McGuire, boy, he said it to the wrong guy who, look, it's one of the moments of the year. People are going to remember 2024 for Charlie Blackmon's retirement, the Jake Cave going ballistic in right field on the check swing heard around the Rockies, and the Cal Quantrill elbow drop from the top of the steel cage on the larynx of Reese McGuire, just destroying him in an all-time put down. And gosh, even after the incident, you heard some of the rumors about some of the Red Sox maybe trying to get into the Rockies clubhouse and challenge Quantrill to a fight. Quantrill being escorted out to the bus by some security. Some worry that perhaps at the airport, maybe, because again, both Boston and Colorado were leaving Denver to go to separate cities. Are they going to bump into each other? Are we going to have some beef? Cooler heads prevailed, though, thankfully. And, well, there's nobody cooler right now in the Rockies world, I think, than Brenton Doyle with the back-to-back gold gloves. I'm trying to segue. Cooler heads prevailing, and Brenton Cool, Joe Cool, man, July's player of the month in the National League. He was incredible. You want to celebrate Doyle, and I will, but for me, a big what if is, what if this string of great play that he had started about 2 weeks earlier? If that would have happened, Brenton Doyle would have been an all-star. He would have been down in Dallas. Undoubtedly. He was on the cusp. It was McMahon, Doyle, and Ezequiel Tovar. Those are the three guys that were neck and neck. And Doyle turned it on a week and a half too late. Maybe even just a week too late. Again, no fault of his own. It's not being critical. It's just the reality of his July was incredible. You look on August 1st at the numbers and you say, who's the best player on the Rockies? Statistically, it was Brenton Doyle at that point. He wins the Player of the Month award in July. 333 average, 11 homers, 27 RBI, 1194 OPS in 25 starts. First Rocky to win the Player of the Month award since CJ Cron in August of 2021. August 1st, Jay Cave clutch again in a 5-4 comeback victory in 10 innings. 3-1 count, down 4-2 in the ninth, 2 outs in Angel Stadium. Cave goes boom off Hunter Strickland in Anaheim to keep them alive and win that game. A couple weeks later, August 17th, remember that day, Todd Helton Day, as they put the gold ring, the Hall of Fame ring, around Todd Helton's retired number 17 out in right center field. He also returns with his plaque. Wonderful tradition that I love that the Hall of Fame does that. I don't think they've done it for every single player going back to his home ballpark. I think just the Rockies have done a good job at celebrating their Hall of Famers in that way. But he goes, tons of fans got an opportunity to see what his plaque looks like, because Cooperstown is a trek. Even if you were to fly into New York State, or I should say New York City, or upstate New Jersey, that's another 3-hour drive to get there. So plenty of Rockies fans will never get the chance to go to Cooperstown to see his plaque in the Hall of Fame. But on that day, August 17th, many did get to see his plaque for first, maybe only time. Wonderful thing, wonderful tradition that the Rockies have with that. Not sure the next time we're going to have a plaque at Coors Field, but nevertheless, that was such a fun day. Touching speech by Helton. Ryan Spielbergs does a wonderful job as the MC. Peyton Manning was there, had some nice quips about Todd Helton. Definitely a wonderful day, again, at a point in the year in which you knew that the Rockies were already out of the postseason hunt. August 21st, in Washington, youth movement arrives. It's in full force. On that Tuesday night game, Angel Chivilli, 22 years old and 23 days, gets the save. His battery mate, Drew Romo, also 22 years old and 357 days. They become the youngest battery in Colorado history to record a save. Wonderful moment there in the nation's capital. August 24th, big victory big victory for Colorado in Yankee Stadium. So many of the young guys getting an opportunity to play in Yankee Stadium. East Coast rabid fans also doing it on Old Timers Day, getting to see the likes of Jeter and Mariano Rivera, Andy Pettitte, tons of legendary players. And the Rockies win 9-2 as 4 rookies hold the Yankees to just 5 hits. Bradley Blaylock, who you might recall came over from the Milwaukee Brewers in the Nick Mears trade, earns his first big league win. Luis Peralta makes his major league debut. And Jay Cave has another game. He goes 4 for 5, finishing a triple shy of the cycle against his former team, against the club that originally drafted and developed him. Great weekend in New York. That was the only game that they did win, but it still was a really strong and positive one for the Rockies, spoiling the Yankees on Old Timers Day. Back home on August 27th, Charlie Blackmon, his 42nd leadoff home run. August 30th through September 1st, another memorable weekend at Coors Field, as the holidays are home for the holidays. No, I flubbed that one pretty badly. But the holidays come back. Not just Matt and his son Jackson, but you also get Ethan Holiday visiting Coors Field for the first time. He's one of the top picks in 2025 coming out of high school, Stillwater High School. Could the Rockies nab him at number 4? I'll say this. Ethan Holiday was very impressed with how nice Coors Field was. His first time visiting there. And it was just a celebration of the holidays. Matt talking for a long time in the Rockies dugout. And then we go over to the Orioles clubhouse. Jackson talking with him. Some wonderful quips back and forth about, well, I don't think we can recapture that famous image from 2007 with Matt Holliday as after winning Game 4 of the NLCS to go to the World Series, holding up his young son, who pretty much almost looks like he's about the same age from in 2007, and Jackson quipping like, "Yeah, I don't think we can recreate that photograph, as my dad's got too many pickleball injuries, so it's just not going to happen. Where he's not going to be able to hoist me up anymore." But Holliday gets his first hit, gets a triple, in fact, to right field, and of course you probably saw plenty of those clips of him running around in the grass at Coors Field as a little kid, hitting wiffle balls back in 2007. So doing it 17 years later, just a wonderful baseball moment. Matt throwing out the first pitch to Jackson on August 31st. And then I don't remember if it was the Friday night game or the Saturday night game, but it has to be one of the greatest plays I've ever seen in person. Certainly one of the best plays of 2024. I don't know where it stands on the official list because it was 2 above average plays. There wasn't one 5-star play. They might have both been 4-star plays, but Brenton Doyle made 2 4-star plays in one action. Diving across his body to make a catch in front of him, and then immediately getting up, knowing full well that he's got to make this catch and immediately pop up. Jackson Holliday tags up from second. Doyle with the catch and cannon to third base to get Jackson for the outfield assist. Just incredible skill set. Incredible. It's something you would get in a CrossFit workout. Like the way he was able to go across his body, make the catch, then make the throw. It was astounding. It really was. September 6th, you had another catch and cannon from Brenton Doyle, this time in what has to be the greatest non-walk-off win in Rockies history. Probably the greatest non-walk-off ending to any game. I mean, again, you got a diving catch by Brenton Doyle. No, it wasn't a diving catch. I take that back. He camped under it. So the first part of the play was can of corn. But the runner tagging up from second to third. Again, this is less than a week after the Brewers should have been able to scout what happened to Jackson Holliday, a guy with elite speed. But gets the runner at third base to end the game for the final out in Milwaukee. Again, one of the greatest non-walk-off endings to a game in baseball history. Easily the greatest to end a Rockies game. And see, say what you will about Tovar to Helton in Game 4. That wasn't a great defensive play. It was a very good defensive play, and it was a very memorable defensive play. But if you're just talking about the throw that Doyle made, just incredible. September 13th, Hunter Goodman gets good. Yeah, he gets an opportunity, hammers a 2-homer game, go-ahead grand slam, actually gave him 7 RBI on the night. Became the second Rockies catcher with 7 RBI in the game, and the second youngest with 7 RBI in a game, behind only Troy Tulowitzki. Goodman really strong to end his season, getting a lot more opportunities behind the plate. Had 4 homers in a 4-game stretch and 5 homers through 7 games between September 8th through September 17th. The September 14th game, a lot to go down, or rather the date of September 14th. A lot happened. First, Spokane won the High A Northwest League in walk-off fashion. Talked in part 1 about the plunk-off, or rather the clock-off by Kyle Finnegan. Well, this one was a plunk-off. Bases loaded. Kyle Karros, the eventual Northwest League MVP, gets hit by a pitch, jogs down to first base. Spokane wins the Northwest League championship. And as Bud Black said at the winter meetings, if you're the MVP in the Northwest League, it's like winning your conference in college football. You're going to the bowl game and you're going to spring training. So Kyle Karros will get himself a big league invite. September 14th, Spokane wins it all. And then also on September 14th, You had Sam Hilliard, homers, pinch hit homer. Big day, big game for Sam Hilliard. He not only has his 5th career pinch hit home run, 3 of which came when the game was tied or took the lead for the Rockies in the 9th inning or later, something that only Jason Giambi has ever done. But he hits that pinch hit home run on the same day that he awards a scholarship as part of Team Hilliard's ALS Foundation. And the reason he was doing that day is New Year's Eve. The reason he was doing it that day was because it was the 3rd anniversary of his father's passing. And that was, for me, that was one of my more favorite moments in the year. It was a grounding moment for me as someone who started covering the Rockies in 2018, started covering Sam Hilliard's career in 2018, and talking with him in Hartford that year as well when he was in AA, seeing his debut in the majors in 2019, getting to know his family a little bit, and having him come back and have the success that he did in 2024, and seeing that was it was just wonderful. It made me feel very grateful for what I do and to get to know some of these players and be a part of their playing careers, be a part of their lives as well. And I was just really happy, just genuinely happy for a human being for the success that they were having in that moment, more than probably any player, So that was just a great one on September 14th. September 16th, Antonio Senzatella. After Germán Márquez did it in July, Senzatella does it, returns to Coors Field, hadn't pitched a game in Denver since 2022. Remember, he had the ACL tear in St. Louis, then Tommy John in 2023. Colorado gives him a comeback win. He was thankful to all the fans. Was really happy about that. September 17th, the next day, Luis Peralta ties a franchise record with his 11th consecutive scoreless appearance. Does that to start his career, keep in mind. His streak would eventually go to 13 games. He eventually would pitch 12 1/3 innings pitched, allowing only 1 run. 1 earned run, but also 1 run. Didn't have one of those outings where he gave up 5, but only 1 was earned because there was an error on the play. No, gave up 1 run, period, after his call-up. Really great pickup in that trade with the Pirates for Jalen Beeks. They basically traded 2 months of Jalen Beeks for 6+ seasons of control over Luis Peralta, a lefty reliever who was having a great 2024, and the Rockies gave him an even bigger opportunity in the majors. Again, showing what you can do if you're a seller at the deadline. If a veteran can't help you go to the postseason, you might as well get something for him that can benefit your roster down the line. Great pickup there. You also had Bud Black in that September 17th win, getting victory number 535 for the Rockies, most in Rockies history. He got the beer and shavy cream bath coming into the press conference room, with the towel, having to wipe his face down. He had already set the record for most games managed in August, surpassing Clint Hurdle. Now he surpasses Hurdle for most wins in that September 17th game. Then the next week was all about Seth Halverson. September 21st in LA, shuts down the Dodgers. First career save, plants his flag by striking out Max Muncy on a 100.2 mile an hour fastball with the bases loaded during his first save, and down the Dodgers. Not bad for the rookie, who was only drafted in 2023, only drafted last year, a 7th round pick. Keep that in mind. Impressive stuff for Halverson. In September 26th, back at home, he threw 14 pitches during an outing, 11 of which were strikes for his second save. He touched 100 miles an hour or more in 7 of those 14 pitches, including one at 102.5. It's one of the reasons why Bud Black has Halverson penciled in for the closer race in 2025. Seems like he might have that mentality, certainly has the stuff to be a closer for the Rockies. September 27th, Brenton Doyle reaches 30 stolen bases. He was struggling down at the end of the season, struggling injury-wise, physically, had some patella tendonitis issues, only played in 4 of the final 8 games of the year, but gets that 30th stolen base, joins the 23-30 club, 23 homers, 30 stolen bases. Dante Bichette, Ellis Burks, and Larry Walker, the only others to match that power speed combination. And then from there, we get Charlie Blackmon week. We get the end. We get the end of the string. We get Rockies fans showing up to Coors Field, supporting the Rockies, supporting baseball, supporting Coors Field, supporting Denver sports. You know, there were 9 sellouts this past year, including the final 3 games of the season. Yes, it was against the Dodgers. Yes, Shohei Ohtani was there. But 9 sellouts for a team that lost 101 games. In fact, there was a sellout on their 100th loss, which I don't know that I really need to look back in baseball history to know that no team that has ever lost 100 games, their 100th being at home, has ever played in front of a sold-out crowd before. So, again, that just lets you know that Rockies fans will support no matter what. Baseball fans support no matter what. And Coors Field gets supported no matter what. But the final week for Charlie was great. He had his retirement ceremony, coincidentally, right as Nolan Arenado was returning for his only trip to Denver with the Cardinals. He sneaks in the back of the press conference room, was a part of that farewell press conference. He spoke in the Cardinals clubhouse, was very open, honest, very funny, relaxed. He was incredible. Highly recommend you check out that conversation, talking all about Charlie, talking all about, you know, what it was like knowing Blackmon, playing with him, how odd he was, how he did things Charlie's way, and how, look, the fruits of his labor paid off for 14 years. So he might have done it his way. He might have been stubborn, but he turned out to be right. He very much turned out to be right. Highly recommend you go ahead and check that out. And it seemed as if with each game that passed at Coors Field, louder and louder the fans got each time you heard, "I don't want to lose your love tonight." Got so loud. In fact, game 160 on that Friday night, Charlie Blackmon, in front of the sold-out crowd, steps up to the plate, and there was about a 3-minute delay. The entire song played for what was reported as, one of the umpires said, second base was quote-unquote too puffy. Or rather, it wasn't puffy enough. I don't know how you see that. I don't know how you know that. But you know what? Doesn't matter. It was too puffy. It wasn't puffy enough. Again, it doesn't matter which one it actually was. They said it wasn't puffy enough. But they stall the game. The entire song plays. Charlie gets, 3-minute standing ovation. Everyone loves it. It was the darndest thing I've ever seen, and I loved it. It was wonderful. It was definitely one of the few times you can look and say the umpires definitely got that right. I don't think there was any baseball fan, Dodgers fan, you name it. They know that the umpires got it absolutely right. And in that final game of the season, it was about Ohtani. It was also about Ryan Feltner. Now, Feltner, he ended up deciding the NL batting race by holding Ohtani 0 for 3. It would have required, somewhat of a Herculean effort for Ohtani to pass Luis Ariz. But nevertheless, Feltner knew that Ohtani was trying to win a batting title. And that, maybe it would have taken a historic day at the plate. I don't remember what the numbers were, 5 for 5, 6 for 6. If Ariz had gone 0 for 6, that might have shifted things for Ohtani to have won the Triple Crown. But Feltner wasn't looking at the box score for the Padres. He just knew he wanted to shut down Ohtani, and he did, 0 for 3. And he ends up posting a 2.98 ERA over his final 15 starts of the season, joining Germán Márquez, who's the last guy to ever have a 15-start streak with a sub 3 ERA. Márquez did that at the front of that 2021 All-Star campaign. He was great. Feltner was absolutely great. You also had that Sam Hilliard home run, 476 to right field on the upper deck concourse. Are you kidding me? the Hilliard Pavilion. I forget what they call it. The players like to bust his chops because he's the only one that can hit the ball up there. He does it in batting practice. Still the only person I ever saw hit a ball so high during BP that it bounced on the warning track. Folks, it hit the warning track and still bounced over the Bridich barrier. That's Sam Hilliard. That's his strength. But game 162, man, it was a whirlwind. That was definitely a day I did not want to leave the ballpark. Arrived seemingly just after sunrise. I don't know what time. 8:30, 9 o'clock. To see number 19 out in center field. The number that is in the grass. But to see that and then to be around after doing a post-game podcast just before sun went down. I think the sun even had set at that point. But I didn't want to leave the ballpark because it was just such a magical game. Charlie's final game. His children come out to throw out the first pitch. He wasn't expecting that. Josie and Wyatt were there. That was beautiful. Great speech by Charlie for all the fans. He gets the Toyota Tundra that was on display at Coors Field. Couldn't believe. It's like, oh my God, that was the one that was actually at Coors Field. Had the number 19 on the hood. Again, the 19 out in center field on the grass. He runs out to center field, batting leadoff, playing center field. Runs out there one last time by himself. All throughout the game, video recordings from some of the greatest Rockies legends, Carlos Gonzalez, Todd Helton, Trevor Story, even Nolan Arenado. And he ends it all. He ends his career with a base hit. Comes out of the game. And crazy to think, too, that Charlie's final game was September 29th, which was also the final date for Todd Helton, September 29th, 2013. And that put a bow on it. That wrapped up the 2024 season for the Colorado Rockies. One that, again, in the standings, in the win-loss column, wasn't great, but there were great moments, great performances, great players. What does it mean for 2025? That's why you're following along to the Rockies Insider. That's why you're subscribed to the channel. You should be. That's why you're subscribed to the podcast. If you're not, you should be. Over on the social medias, at Patrick D. Lyons, at Patrick D. Lyons, MLB, and at Rockies Insider. This was a wonderful year. This was definitely a year of transition for me, a grateful one that I couldn't have done without the folks over at Just Baseball, without the support of a good friend of mine, Kevin Henry. Thank you. This was definitely a transition year after getting laid off by a company that is somewhat known now for laying people off late in the year. I at least had a little bit more notice than the folks from All City Network that were laid off a week before Christmas. But the support of so many folks like Derek Montilla and Jesse Friedman and so many more. I shouldn't have started naming names because there are a lot of people out there. And Blake Street Banner also. Shout out to those guys because they were very supportive in what I was trying to do and helping me out with a lot of things behind the scenes, from Lewis to Aaron McBride. Just a great group of folks over at Blake Street Banner. So want to give them a shout out and have you go over and support them and what they do. So it was great launching the Rockies Insider podcast. Now there's a Rockies Insider newsletter. Bigger, better things up ahead in 2025. And so 2024 is a wrap. What's going to happen in 2025? Well, hey, stay tuned in to the Rockies Insider because I'll let you know. Because you've given me that momentum, so I plan on giving it back to you tenfold. Because as I like to say, momentum can only be as good as my next show. So I will talk to you 2025.